great beasts of the world can be very intimidating. Giant bears, insanely huge wolves, or in the Warhammer universe, its name is Taurox the Brass Bull, one of the most terrifying beastmen to ever walk the earth, having only one weak spot in his armor. Kind of like the Warhammer version of Achilles, I guess, but very twisted. Taurox himself is insane. He came along with the Silence and the Fury DLC, and he was very much well received for many Beastmen players, myself included, because the Beastmen, they were hurting. They needed a good DLC to bring them up out of the pits, and I'm glad that they brought Taurox here, because he really does bring quite a bit to the table with his Minotaurs. So I'm going to show you all there is to know about Taurox the Brass Bull and his campaign and how to play him here. So of course, if you liked what I do, remember to chuck a like down below, leave a comment about Taurox, what's your favorite thing about him, if you like playing him or not, and as always, sub to the channel. Let's roll into Taurox the Brass Bull. Alright, here we are, the big minion boy himself. He starts with a hefty army up here where Nagaroth and all the Wood Elves and all that are. So he starts in an okay position, but he does have some pretty powerful enemies that he's going to go up against, like the dwarves, like Grombrindle. Mother Stankia is up there now. The Dark Elves are always a problem, and Chaos, but again, he most likely will ally with Chaos, but him being Beastman, he can stay on the move and pretty much not have to settle down pretty much anywhere except for one spot, maybe multiple spots, but we'll get into that. So he starts with a pretty sizable army with some Minotaurs, with shields, some regular Minotaurs, so it's a decent army. He has Rampage, which means he can maintain his momentum from successive battle victories, which means Taurox can effectively fight so many battles in his campaign on one turn that he can do a decimating amount of damage, especially if he has a good amount of Minotaurs in his army or really good Beastmen units. His Dread cost is minus 25 for his Minotaurs with shield, Minotaurs with great weapons. He has a Juggernaut raiding stance, which increases his campaign movement range, but reduces his raiding income. Rivers of Blood, which is a special regional effect. It decreases leadership from non-chaos races and increases leadership from chaos races, which helps out you and your chaos allies. His weapon strength buff to Minotaurs, which is really good. And he has Blood Beast, which is his special explosion. So let's get into his campaign and learn how he works. We shall, Taurox, we shall dominate the world for the Dark Masters. Now, Taurox, again, he wins battles to get his Rivers of Blood and his momentum. So, I'm going to add that sorcerer in here. You see the momentum up here. As you win battles and you initiate your momentum, you'll be able to get more recharges on your movement range. The more battles you win, the more recharges you have. And then, of course, Rampage up more, you get more of these dread games, like Savage Rampage, and then Call the Gore Bulls, Cataclysmic Rampage. This is your Rampage progress. As you get more momentum, you'll get more Rampage. This is really good. I'll go more into that later. Let's go and take out Clark Arand, and I'll show you how it starts to work. That is knock him out, knock him around. Place our Herd Stone, and we are up to 5 momentum. Again, you get more momentum, you get up to this Rampage, and then you start getting these rewards. The Harsh Rampage, I think then you can unlock these different Rampage things as you get them up there. Then you claim one of the rewards. You go up to each one, you claim one of the rewards. I usually will go for the Harsh Rampage. I will get either the Ward Save, because that's really good, the Blood Greed for his army, which is pretty good as well, or his melee defense. One of these 3, but I usually do Blood Greed or Ward Save. And then for Savage, once we get to Savage tier, you get momentum to replenish, momentum cost to replenish campaign movement range -1. That's good. Solar Eclipse Dark Mood event will trigger next turn, which is a nice one, but it's only useful for 1 turn. Or you get the income from raising settlements and horde building construction. You get some dread for each one as well. Dread gain for battles is pretty good though too, because the more dread you have, the more units you can unlock, the better stuff you have. So I usually, for the tier 2 Savage Rampage, I'll get the Stampede of Dread to unlock more, increase the dread gain, and then the momentum cost Stampede. It shows if you can get the Cataclysmic Rampage, which is, whew, that's a lot of killing to get there. They're kind of good, but this one right here, Call of the Minotaurs, really good for increasing a Minotaur count, especially for Taurox. And then the Gore Bull cost is pretty good. Recruit rank +5 for Gore Bulls. I usually go for these 2 because the other 2 just aren't as good. The Brave Shamans and the War Gores aren't just not as good as the Gore Bulls. So that's pretty much what I go for. Alrighty, that's his Rampage explained. Now, each turn that you don't do something, you start to lose momentum and your Rampage starts to slow down. So you'll want to keep fighting as much as you can. Taurox is also a mobile army like a Horde, so he has the ability to build these Horde buildings to be able to recruit stuff. Now with the Shadows of Change DLC, they have the Zangors as one of the Gores that they can recruit, which is pretty cool, but they're not as good for Taurox. And I won't use them in the course of this guide because most people aren't going to have that ability. A lot of people didn't buy that DLC. Okay, so for his special line, he has Favor of the Skull Throne, gives him the brass body, a lot of damage resistance, a lot of melee defense, and a good amount of spell resistance for his armor. Juggernaut enables Dazed, which is a pretty good contact effect for him. Drenched in Blood, which increases his Bestial Rage. additional stack of River of Blood. Titans of the Deep Forest gives him more armor to his tall units. Gore Feast, which gives Gore Greed for Minotaur units, replaces Blood Greed. Gore Greed is like Blood Greed, but you have to work up to it. And it's a lot simpler to work up to it, but Blood Greed activates under a certain condition. Gore Greed's always active. So that's the positive to it. Demonic Vigor gives him perfect vigor. Bullish Metal gives him some melee defense and ward save. Herd Lord gives him more defense for Minotaurs, which increases his favoritism for Minotaurs. Then he gets Blood Caller, which increases melee attack. So he increases both melee defense and attack by 5. Not a huge increase, but it's something and it helps. He does have Fueled by Blood, which increases his speed, Forge Tux, all that. His quest items, the Rune Tortured Axid, gives him a decent amount of melee attack and armor piercing weapon strength. Plus, it enables him to have magical attacks, so he already has Flaming, but then he'll have magic as well. Taurox is fuming. He is insane. Just him as a combatant by himself is enough to just destroy everything, because his armor is 130. His armor is just incredibly insane. So I usually, for his Horde, I like to get as many of these buildings as possible, but they cost a lot, and they do need the Horde level to be up. I don't really get this building, because again, I don't believe the Break Shamans are that useful. I mean, they have the Shadows one is probably the most useful. The Beast one is not really that useful. The Death one and the Wild. Those spell lords aren't really as good in the game as Shadow is, so I don't really use them. But these ones, Vile Entropy, which is a hex, reduces enemies' range, which is great. Touched by the Moon, which is a nice army ability. It infects your allies, and then I think it also causes them to die. They start to wither away. So it can be good for buffing you up, but it can turn you to die pretty fast. I do the heads on spikes though. Get some dread gained each turn, and eventually you'll start getting some effects. I think you start getting Kanakrophis Assault. When attacking, applies temporary penalties to the enemy army's leadership and melee defense at the start of battle, which is nice. It helps boost your guys' chances to deal more damage to them. Now, when you start, you're going to be recruiting some trash units like Ungors. I usually do the Ungor Spearmen Herds, some Ungor Raiders, some Chaos Warhounds. Nothing super fancy, just a bunch of chaff. You'll want to keep alive your Minotaurs and Taurox himself more than anything, because you're not going to really have the ability to really get them. I'm going to get Primeval Rage first so I can unlock his melee skill light. And then for the Challenges of the Dark Gods, we of course want to get Light of the No Horns first, but eventually we want to try to get Days of Wrath. If we perform 2 Rituals of Ruin, we can get it. So you want to really focus on getting those Rituals of Ruin started. That means getting more of your Herd Stones up here and do the Rituals of Ruin to destroy everything. For the Herd Stones itself, I usually will look at the garrison that I'm going to get, because the effects don't really pertain that much. They're very situational. The effects I don't really care that much for, to be honest. It can kind of come and go. Even these ones, like missile damage for enemy towers and ammunition for all Beastmen, Warriors of Chaos, and Norse units, it's good, but I'm really just looking for the garrison. The Centaur one, Aryan Offering, and the Winds of Malady are good. The Wrecking Picks are decent. Eventually you can get 3 Best Gore Herds and 2 Minotaurs with great weapons, but I'll start with this one, the Razor Gore Horde, because the Razor Gores are pretty powerful. Now when we go to the Rewards of Dread, like I said, for unit caps, I usually go down here, and when I can, I'm going to get Minotaurs, because Minotaurs are just going to be more superior than anything else for him. Even though I will get some Gorgons and get some Cygors for like artillery support, Minotaurs, Razor Gores, maybe some Zangors to help out, but only if you have the DLC. And then for Lords and Heroes, again, we can gain these Lords by a lot of Dread. I usually go for Gorbals if I need a hero. Upgrades, focus on getting the Herdstone levels up first, and then we'll focus on all this other stuff, like the new Horde armies are raised with Horde encampment building level 2, things like that. It just helps ease the process as you go. And then for items, I'll usually save up and get some items for physical resistance or weapon strength. Movement range is good to have as well. There isn't anything super insane in here, but they do provide some good abilities, like Blood Frenzy is pretty good. Savage Dominion, who summons a Cygor, that can come in handy. It's something to think about. But again, it's not going to be one of your main concerns as Taurox. You're going to be trying to just destroy as much as possible, and then do your rituals so that you can get your Minotaurs unlocked, and then start really destroying. So as you go around, you raise, and then you want to look for this symbol here, for the Bloodground symbol, and then raise those. And then you can do a Ritual of Ruin, dig in, and go on to the next one. Then after you get that, you'll unlock some more Ruination, which will increase your level. And once you get to Ruination 4, you'll start to really enjoy yourself, because you'll have your Minotaurs unlocked, and they are going to decimate. Having an army of Minotaurs led by the Brass Minotaur is going to be really, really cool to see. But for the meantime, for Tier 1, you're going to be dealing with trash units. But that pretty much covers the campaign and how Taurox branches out, trying to just cover the world in destruction. And let's now take a look at some army compositions. Because he doesn't buff up his Minotaurs or any specific unit that much, he usually just buffs up himself. I'm going to do the compositions in skirmish battles. Don't worry, there are several lords that I do have to do them on a campaign map, but these lords are easier for me to make so that I can get them out to you faster. Let's dive into the compositions now. Alright, here we are against the Dark Elf army. We've started. We're going to engage what we can. Have Taurox go in the middle. Yeah, we're going to take a lot of casualties, but that's okay. That is alright, because we also are going to bolster the forces with our Minotaurs. And having access to the Lord of Shadows, if you get lucky enough, is going to help you a lot too. As observed. Not going to be great, but should still be able to do some damage and help. These Ungors are going to take a lot of damage, but if you can get back to the enemy with your other guys here, these war beasts, you can start to do a lot of damage to them too. Alright, so these war beasts are going to charge and take care of these enemy archers, so archers can focus on the other guys. We're going to do, oh, Taurox, come on, activate your ability. Ooh, yes. Slaughter them all. Already had some fallback and retreat. The Mind Razor can help out sometimes as well. Alright, and it's a little bit more tricky in the early game because, again, the enemy is going to often have more skilled combatants than your guys'. Your combatants are going to be kind of trash. Our dogs are getting caught up now because they're kind of trash. They're not that good, so they're going to get caught up pretty easily. But again, you can make do. They're losing a lot of guys, but it's okay. Having Taurox in the fight still, dealing with this enemy lord is going to be really helpful. And there we go. There we go. So you're going to be struggling very early on because these Ungors are just so bad. You got to spam them out. You got to trash mob them because they're not going to be able to really produce anything real good until you get a lot of dread. And then you can start getting the good units, the hard hitters, like the regular gores and all that. You can start getting them. And then of course you out your ruination level even more. So let's go into a tier 2 now. Alright, here we are against the Wood Elves. We've upped our ante with some Gore Herds, Centigores, Razor Gores, which are really good. And of course, I've gotten a Gore Bowl as well to help buff out my melee line. So we're going to send our Gores in to deal with the Wood Elves here. They're just going to try to engage the main Wood Elf line, do a good amount of damage. Hopefully, we're going to send our Centigores out to do some damage as well. Maybe deal with this Eagle here. And our Razor Gores are going to deal with the enemy backline. Gonna send our Minotaurs in through the middle as well, with Taurox and his Gore Bull backing up. And then of course the Shadow gonna do even better. And we already lost one Gore Horde. That's the thing, the Centigores are no match to any Elven missile, because they're just not as good as Elven missiles. And they are still very fragile units. So they're not gonna be great, they're not gonna be terrible either. So we're gonna send the Razor Gores up against the Treekin here. Do some bonus damage, Treekin, and then get this one over here to start dealing some damage against the Glade Guard, which is going to be great. Taurox, you're going to go after the Glade Lord. We're still going to lose some troops. You know, it's not going to be great. We're not going to lose as many as before, but we will still lose some guys because the Razor Gores tend to rampage a lot, and then the Centigores, like I said, they don't have a lot of armor. We do have to get Taurox out of there, because if Taurox stays in there, he's going to die. But going up against Wood Elves, they're probably the bane of the Beastmen, but we can deal with them pretty easily after a while. We just got to get the upper hand on them, you know, get them not firing their bows and everything. Because if they're firing their bows, they're going to be doing a lot of damage to us. But if they're not, and we're doing the damage to them, oh boy, our Gore Bull took a huge hit from some Wood Elves here. Let's do some damage. Taurox, let's get him in. See, where are these guys at? Oh, they're down there too. Okay. These Treekin are probably the most dangerous ones, despite, of course, the elves themselves. Dealing with any Beastman army, you're going to have to deal with Beastmen retreating and all that. And a cycle of retreat is just going to keep going, because Beastmen just don't have a lot of morale to stay in the fight. Not like dwarves or any other of the main races. They just don't have that much power. But if they get into a fight, they'll be good. You just gotta keep them in the fight, you know? Like, these Minotaurs are just sitting here doing nothing. They could be going after those Glade Guard there, you know? These Centigores doing the same thing. Could be going after the Glade Guard there. You'll find these units just sitting there doing nothing. because the enemy will run away from them. You gotta keep them attacking and keep them fighting, or else they won't be fighting anything, and then they'll just be sitting there collecting dust. And that's why I really like the whole mechanic of the Z's down here. I like that because that allows me to see what units, hey, these units are just sitting there doing nothing. We should have them do something. We've lost a lot of our Razor Gores, and quite a bit of our troops too, I gotta say. These Wood Elves are pretty much the bane of our existence, but we're getting to a point where we're gonna be able to deal with any army pretty easily by tier 3. So that wraps up a tier 2, let's go into a tier 3. And here's my N-tier army. Just a little gaze around here. We have a lot of Minotaurs. We have the regular Minotaurs down here, the dual axes. We have some that have shields. In the back, we have the two-handers, the great weapons Minotaurs. We also have some Gorgons. I usually bring the regular Gorgon and the Blood Brute Behemoth, which is a Gorgon with Frenzy and the Mark of Corn, and then the Jabberslite, and then of course Cygors as well in the back to help a little bit of artillery fire. And of course we have Taurox, and we have our Gorbol as well as our Bray Shaman. Though I really don't use him that much in the late game. You could easily replace him with another Gorbol or another Jabberslite or something big to help bolster up your army. Right now we're going up against these dwarves, so the dwarves are going to do their best to try to stop us, but I think we're going to be able to do really well against them. We already have our Cygors dealing some damage against them. Jabberslite's going to go through to deal with some grudge throwers in the back. We're going to send our Minotaurs up here to do some damage against them as well. And we're going to go through here, here, and then we're going to send in Taurox as well, activate his brass body and his blood feast ability, and then I'll send our other one right in as well. Foe Seeker, Deadly Onslaught, and the Axe of Men. Means he's going to do a lot of damage. Let's go in and roll and kill. And now it just becomes like a blood frenzy. We do take a lot of casualties with some troops, but that's just because of either allied fire or these are against Slayers. Slayers do bonus damage against us, so we still are killing a lot of the Slayers, but we pretty much routed because of the Slayers. They're not good against anything that does a lot of bonus versus large like Slayers, and we'll still be able to finish them off. And we pretty much routed the majority of their troops already because only a few of them were Slayers. Now if it was a Slayer army, we might have some trouble because again, bonus versus large, Slayers are really effective against that, and we lost almost a whole unit of Minotaurs because of that. So just be careful whenever an enemy has too much bonus versus large. Be careful with that because you don't want them to just completely destroy your troops. But again, you're very fast. You got a lot of very heavy infantry, or heavy monster infantry that can do a lot of damage. But again, because they're monster infantry, they can take a lot of damage too from bonus versus large units like Dwarven Ballista or Dwarven Slayers and stuff. But against normal Dwarven armies like this one, they do pretty well. So that was the 3 tiers. Now let's wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen, and we've covered everything for them. Alrighty, so that was Taurox the Brass Bull for y'all. There he is, screaming and hooting and hollering. Again, as all Beastmen, they struggle in the early game with how shit their units are, but as you get more, and you can field more better units like Minotaurs, you can really start to just pummel the enemy, and your Minotaurs are insanely fast. They have a speed of 62, and then you can buff them up even more to have more momentum, more movement speed, more speed in battle, and they can just close in on the enemy so fast that you can just decimate the enemy. Like what we did with the dwarves. Any enemy that has a significant missile advantage, you can just bum rush them and get them out. So Taurox, really good guy, well, really bad guy. Got a bit of a temper, you know? I'd watch that temper. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this guide, and as always, remember to keep your strategic trap fans, Colonel out.